Well, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let me just ensure that we have sound really quick. Thank you so much. If you can hear me, if you are watching from anywhere across the US, please tell us. We are today all with guests from the West Coast, so I'm very excited to welcome our guest in just a little bit. We are, of course, today representing Army and Marine Corps veteran spouses. So if you are out there, part of our community. Army, let's show those hands. Please post it in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to be able to send you shout outs. Our guest today, Angelica, is a veteran spouse from Army lifestyle. Myself, Marine Corps, 21 years, both of us. So I look forward to the conversation and on the contributions of her, of course, support through today's discussion. But first, let me just get started. We do have sound. We seem to be having great sound out there. So thank you so much for joining us today. Our careers webinar. This is in our intent to connect members across our key networks to highlight our career opportunities and partnerships. Of course, these sessions are raise awareness of open doors and meaningful employment for all Blue Star career members. So please join us. It's really easy for you to just join us and contribute. Today, this discussion focuses on how mission-driven work can allow you to contribute to a more meaningful cause, collaborate with very purpose driven individuals, but of course, see the direct impact of your efforts. It's more than just a paycheck for a lot of individuals who work in nonprofit. It's about creating change, empowering community, and making a difference. And you will get to know how Angelica is definitely in her day to day, she is creating that difference. Angelica Ponce is a seasoned military spouse, of course, a member of the 211 San Diego team, and with her experience in executive recruiting, her expertise, she has made remarkable ability to identify top talent candidates and contribute to the day-to-day hiring with very purposeful, intentional places. So she has supported a lot of job seekers in landing their next career in nonprofit, particularly right now in her role. And we are very excited to hear her best practices, her tips, how you can land the next career. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Laura Torres with Blue Star Careers, and I would love to get started and for you to please pay it forward to your network and let them know that this is here. The rest of the month, it's all the conversations through our Wednesday webinars are going to be all about nonprofit work and meet you and meet leaders from this sector so that they can help us out how to land the next nonprofit sector career. Let's get started. Well, hello, hello. Once again, thank you so much for watching, for supporting. Hey, Marine Corps here, veteran spouse. My guest here will tell you in just a little bit how she's military connected. So we would like to, of course, show your hands, show your virtual hands of support by telling us where you're watching, where you're located. We want to be ensure that you get coast to coast support, but also if you're Ocanas. I know a couple of weeks we had a couple of guests from Puerto Rico. Hola, we would love to be able to send you as well shout outs. Thank you so much. We're going to get started. We have a very intentional discussion about nonprofit work, mission driven careers, which can look very differently for anyone. But for our guest, Angelica Ponce from 211, we're very excited to welcome her and to get all of her best practices, tips, and of course, her recruiting just juice and good mindset to let us know how to land the next career. Angelica, thank you so much for supporting today.
You're welcome. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. I am definitely here to just pour in all of my experience and share what I have experienced over the last couple of years in my recruiting career.
Absolutely. So, you, Angelica, military spouse, veteran spouse, please tell us a little bit more about your military connection, your career trajectory, a little bit of your path. I know you have a really heavy experience in executive recruiting. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, so I fell in love and got married to a Army veteran who served in the military for 21 years. He doesn't like to brag, but he was in special operations and he had a wonderful career. And now he's here working in San Marcos as a supervisor for Hunter Industries. And we met because of his resume. So I have a special heart for doing, for recruiting and that kind of thing. But that's initially how I became a veteran spouse. But I was already engaged with a lot of different veteran organizations and helping with resume writing, helping with transition and that kind of thing.
Wow, that is a crazy happy idea. I mean, a story of how you guys met because of the resume. I'm assuming you were perhaps reviewing the resume per
Yes,
se.
yes,
So that's wonderful. That's part two of the season finale of the next, of the next military lifestyle story. So that's wonderful story. Thank you, Angelica. Now, in your extensive experience, of course, now you are a 211 San Diego, which, my personal prior life in the San Diego area. This is one of the best research organizations in the local area. And members who are in the community can get an abundance of different support. But tell us a little bit more in your personal perspective. How did you ended up in 211 in nonprofit work? Why was this such a good fit for you?
absolutely. So most of my career, I worked for big corporations. And I had just finished a contract with San Diego Gas and Electric. It's a very rigorous role in recruiting, and you're recruiting from linemen to engineers. So it was a very rigorous contract. And I had just gotten married, took the summer off, and just kind of was like, what am I going to do when I grow up? And so, because I had a heart for working or doing nonprofit work for free, volunteering all the time, I thought, what better way but to get my toes wet and see what's out there? So I ended up working as a caseworker for Alpha Project, and got to see the underbelly of nonprofit work, and saw the huge need that was out in our community in San Diego. And so I stayed there for a bit, and then an opportunity came knocking on my door on LinkedIn, where I was able to come in and help turn on the whole recruiting strategy at 211 San Diego. And because I had volunteered and had that nonprofit experience, it really helped my regular corporate resume. And so, because I had that experience, they were very interested in speaking with me. And so now I'm here and I've created a strategy. They used to use a staffing agency before. So that agency would, spit out widgets and not really get the culture piece of the organization. And so that's where I came in. And I've been here close to a year now. I've hired a lot of the executives that are there, a lot of the directors, supervisors, and then the call center as well.
Awesome. This is such a great trajectory. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And so you are definitely the recruiter, our to go to in the San Diego area. By all means,
Mhm.
we definitely want to make sure that we are connecting with you and following up with you on LinkedIn. Thank you
Yes.
so much for that value add to our network. Um, Now, let's dive into our discussion. We definitely want to make sure, you and I, of course, nonprofit work. We're different missions, but at the same time, it's all one purpose, a full cause, which is to help individuals put throughout our community. And
Yes.
so, a lot of military spouses or a lot of veterans who are transitioning out of the military, sometimes, often, they want to find purposeful work. Um, in your experience, what makes or what is a good qualified candidate for a mission-driven role within from the scope of your experience? What
I
skills
think
or qualities do you seek?
a lot of the qualities that we look for, especially when I'm seeing resumes day after day, I think a lot of it is not just seeing that they have an education, not just seeing that they have the experience, but that somewhere in their resume that they also have volunteer experience and that they have a network. Um, because that tells me that they have a life outside of work and that there is a passion for something else. Right now we just ran an ad for a courage to call position, for the call center. It was a supervisor role, and I saw a lot of resumes come through. Lots of education, huge military careers, but the one piece that I wouldn't find, it was really hard to find, was their network. who they're affiliated with, nonprofit work that they've done, which I know a lot of people in the military do that on the side, but they didn't mention it in their resume. So those are things that I'm looking for. And I think a lot of organizations are looking to see, like, well, what else do you do? We know that you charged hard and you got your education. That's wonderful. But what else? And so the human component is something that a lot of organizations, especially nonprofits, are looking for.
Got it. That's great to know because I know sometimes we do sort of a tie in our career to the education that we are connecting, or the education where we went to school for, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily balance with all nonprofits, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So in your experience, you know, a job seeker that is trying to get through it, but perhaps they don't have the experience yet in nonprofit, or they failed to mention it, how can they reassure or really stand out? Actually, how can they stand out during a job application for a
You know,
nonprofit role?
That's a great question. Sorry, my computer went out for a second. Um, people aren't utilizing LinkedIn as much as they should. So when people apply to a position and they put in their application, they're asking for the job experience, and you're putting down the years of experience and all that other stuff. If there isn't an area to put your nonprofit work, your volunteer work, you're running a ministry at church even, if you don't have anywhere to put that on the application itself, that's where you utilize LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place, and I kind of use it as an example of, it's like a Facebook for professionals. And so that's where you get to put your accolades. That's where you get to put your extra projects that you're working on. And that's where you can utilize that tool so that when a recruiter contacts you, they look you up on LinkedIn. We use it. It's our lifeline. So if I'm able
Got
to poke in and you know, look up your profile, I can see a lot of stuff. And so that's where you can highlight that information. And don't hide it. It's a great thing that, you're volunteering in your community and giving back. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm glad that you touched bases on that, on the whole LinkedIn thing, because I know that sometimes we are in this conversation that we often have with individuals when we're going through, d- shared and referred for other programs, but or job opportunities, is
Mhm.
the ability to have a LinkedIn profile, but not just have it, but also use it, be active, and use it as your journey, your brag space, or your just cheerleader, sort of a space for you to really broadcast and sell your top qualities, but also
Mhm.
share day-to-day opportunities about your what you're doing, what you're getting involved, as you mentioned. That's extremely so. In your specific, corporate experience, but also right now in nonprofit experience, LinkedIn, is that become really a good component of pre-screening candidates for moving forward, either before
Absolutely.
or after the interview?
It encompasses everything because when you're on LinkedIn and you have your profile, and you're activating it almost like a Facebook where you're liking, conversations, or you're following organizations, or you're following a specific speaker, or someone you're interested in. It's a place where all of a sudden now the analytics are following what you're looking for, right? So now if you're looking for a specific role, the AI component starts kicking in. So you have that component. Then you have the area where you get to brag about yourself, like you said. And then if you see someone that you want to contact, you have the ability to email that person directly, email the head of HR for that organization if you're not getting a response or you just have a question. But it's also a place where recruiters like myself can contact people who are actively in a position that I want to maybe entertain and see if they'd be interested in coming to my organization. And then I also get to see the people that are looking for work. Now, even if you don't get that position, I still now have you on my LinkedIn. And so now later on, a couple months down the road, now I have a position that I think you might be a better fit for. I can contact you and you keep that conversation going. And that's on the part of both parties, not just a recruiter, because we're seeing hundreds of resumes, but it's on your part to say, hey, Angelica, just checking in. Um, you know, I applied for this job, but I saw something else that you guys posted, or even a conversation of, hey, Angelica, I saw that you're connected to Laura. Can you do an introduction? I'd really like to know what position she has open right now. And so it's a friendship online basically where you're building your network. And so that's why I tell people, I know veterans have a special deal with LinkedIn. I would utilize it, and really make the best of it. Highlight projects that you're working on, pictures, upload the picture, talk about the project that you're working on, even if it's something in an organization where you're not even getting paid, but you get to talk about it. So those are kind of the cool things that LinkedIn is able to give you. And obviously, if you want to step it up, you pay a little bit more and you have more access to the resources that they provide, like the classes and that kind of thing, which is what I pay for. So
Absolutely. And that's how you and I met. You and I have not met, if despite our San Diego connection, you and I have not met in person, but
yeah,
we are virtual professional buddies. And so
yeah,
as a result, I reached out to you. I was like, oh, who can do this first webinar for March? And I reached out
mhm,
to you. I pitched in and you're like, sure. So
yeah,
thank you. I mean, and so this is the great opportunity. And I'm glad that you mentioned how even through volunteerism, even through their just side projects, it needs to be is sort of documented through your
yeah,
LinkedIn, your professional network, because that is
mhm,
where you guys, the recruiters, are
absolutely.
pre-screening for candidates and looking into what are some of those, assets and plus business journey that that particular applicant might have been involved in. Now,
Mhm,
Angelica, let me ask you also. Once we get to nonprofit work, I've known a couple of. In my previous life or current life as well, but sometimes when we get to it, it doesn't seem to be what we expected. What are some of those common misconceptions about working in the nonprofit sector that we
yeah,
probably miss when we are like mission driven or just very excited, but we don't think about ahead of time and it
yeah.
becomes, you know,
I think one of the cool things about being in the nonprofit world and being a military spouse, or just a veteran is that the fact that many of us have insurance already. So that could be something that isn't going to hinder you when you go into the nonprofit world because nonprofit doesn't pay as high usually as a corporate position. Some organizations can pay you close to it, but not all of them can. And so usually they have better perks like more vacation, more flexibility in the job, that kind of thing. And so those might be the things you need to think about as far as like before you approach this position. All jobs in the state of California have to post their salary. So be very aware of the salary and be very aware of the job description and the requirements. So if it's not something that's going to fit your budget, don't even put yourself in that situation. But there are, however, organizations that are nonprofit that will pay decent amount of money. So that's the good part. And then there's some of us who, don't, salary's not a big deal. And that's the cool part, because some of us have extra income coming in. That makes it a little bit easier to slide into a position that you really want to do, and salary's not a big deal. And you also have your benefits, so it kind of makes you a better candidate. So I think that's probably one of the challenges I see when people are coming in is the salary aspect of it.
great, thank you. And then going back to that, that food for thought that you just shared, when it comes, any advice when it comes to negotiating a salary or benefits in a mission-driven organization? I think
Mhm.
sometimes we feel guilty asking because we know it's mission-driven. We know that sometimes nonprofits are struggling with funding, or it's kind of based on funding or grants and whatnot. So the applicant side, how do you approach that negotiating of your salary and potential benefits? What are some of those best practices that you would recommend or that you have seen through your applicants negotiate?
I think the best thing, like I said, the position should be posted with the salary range. If you know that you're at the top of the salary range, be open about it. When you're inquiring about the position and they're interviewing you and they're asking you questions and you get down to the salary part of it, and they're going to give you a number. If it's not where you thought it was going to be, definitely say, you know what, I definitely know that I was looking at 75 as being the top pay, for example. That was something that I was looking forward to. based on my experience, based on the knowledge and my education. And remember, education counts. If you have like, an associate, that's 2 years, a bachelor's, that's 3 years, a master's, that's 4 to 5 years experience. So say you only have 2 years of experience in one job, but you have this education, that does count as time on your resume. So don't let recruiters or anybody else take that from you. So also, before you even get on that call for that last interview where they're going to make a deal with you, go online and start looking at other positions and seeing what they're paying so you have a good idea and a good footing on what you're asking for and that it makes sense. And also, you can ask for a sign on bonus also.
Sign-in bonuses are sometimes available during nonprofit work as well.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
wonderful. That's I
Never be afraid. I always tell people closed mouths don't get fed. So you might as well ask. And if they say no, okay. But if they say yes, then hey, you just made extra money for yourself.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
That's just great. Now I know that, and I have a question here, and I love this question, which is gonna go into my next question that I was gonna ask you, and I'm gonna just bring it up. Jessica from LinkedIn is asking, I know a lot of military spouses collect a lot of nonprofit work a lot of over the years, particularly if you are in areas where you were not able to employ. What's the next thing? Volunteer, right?
Yep.
So Jessica is asking, so if she has collected, over 18 years with gaps in resume work history, volunteering with almost every command, how do you compress or share all of that great, exciting, meaningful work into just one page or two pager
Yeah.
when you are applying for a specific roles? Give us your thoughts on what do you see, what do you want to be seeing in a resume from someone who has collected a significant amount of great purposeful work along the way.
I would definitely include a line in there stating volunteer work from this year to this year. You don't have to list everything, but I would definitely make a marker line in the resume. And then at the bottom, you can list out some of the bigger volunteer work that you've done. Like I said, I wouldn't list every single one, especially if it's a long list. Maybe some, highlighted organizations that you would like us to know that where you worked. Um, I would have that at the very bottom of your resume, um, because we do look at gaps and we do go, where were they when they went here? And that, if you're looking at, 5 or 6 months or more of a gap, you definitely want to make sure that you make a marker and you talk about it. So, for example, COVID hit. I went and worked for the state of California. I worked for CalMat, setting up all of the different COVID sites all over California. So it was a great job, fun job, learned a lot of cool stuff. In there, I talk about COVID, and then I put the position and what I did during that time. Um, but I mention it just so they know that for 8, 9 months, I wasn't in my normal recruiting position. I was doing that. So I mentioned that just so they see that I was actually doing something and I wasn't sitting on my laurels, drinking a margarita, So, and then also, if you have a side business, for example, I'm a coach. So my business is Good Grace Consulting. At the bottom of my resume, I talk about the additional projects that I do. So I have that listed on my resume. So I don't leave it out because I've had it since 2017. So it's a big deal. But it's not a part of my regular recruiting resume. And
Got it.
yeah, and the last piece I would say is use AI. So if you have a really long resume, all you're going to need to do is pull it up into your AI system and ask it to create your persona and saying something like, I need to summarize my resume or shorten my resume to a one page, and it will do it for you. Obviously, read through it, make sure it makes sense, but that's another great way to take down your resume and condense it a bit.
Okay. Now, why do you think we feel guilty sometimes from that perspective to either use available tools or technology tools, and or just downsize our resume into that more measurable or more successful tool that most of you recruiters prefer to see, the
Yeah.
7 to 9 second resume? What do you think from a candidate perspective? How do we work through that? What do you think that is that we just feel guilty leaving all of our experience out of it?
It's hard because all this hard work we've put into it, and you feel like you're leaving stuff out. But really, the truth is when you're looking at a job description, read it thoroughly. And on the bottom of it, it'll say requirements. It's a small paragraph, usually. And it'll tell you exactly what they need. They want to know if you have a 4 year degree or not. If they're looking for someone who has specific criteria, someone who knows Excel, someone who knows PowerPoint or, you know, um, Salesforce, that kind of thing. Stick to that. If your resume isn't reflecting what that job description says, you got to redo your resume. And so that's going to make your resume a lot shorter and more exact. Lots of times I have people applying for positions and I'm like, where it doesn't make sense why you're applying for this position. And so again, I would use any AI tool you have, like ChatGPT or Perplexity, even where you can upload the job description and upload your resume and have them sync up so that your resume has a lot of the same verbiage, and that your resume is more concise for that job that you're applying for. And then once you run it through, you should be able to, make some slight changes, update some stuff, make sure it's not fibbing. But also, it has the content that we're looking for because literally we're running through a resume and we're looking for, okay, she has that, she has that, she has that. Oh, she doesn't have that. Okay, move on. So it's
So
really getting the information in front of the recruiter.
So what if I do have that, but I did not mention it in my resume and I might have mentioned it maybe in a cover letter? Are cover letters a good
Yes.
substitution to mention those things? Is that acceptable within
Yeah.
your nonprofit pre-screening world?
Yes. I love cover letters. And for a while I didn't. But I came across a cover letter and it opened my eyes back to kind of the old school thought of having a cover letter because it tells a story and maybe you can't put everything in your resume, right? And maybe, telling the story on LinkedIn, it's okay to show it, but if you tell the story in your cover letter without it being pages and pages long, it's a nice story, especially for military spouses who move around a lot. So it kind of answers some questions that maybe the recruiter has, and then also mention it in the interview also. So that's also a good thing to be transparent. You know.
Okay, Angelica, what if I cannot make it to the interview or I don't get the pre-selection? How can I renegotiate a second view of my application because I failed to mention that or maybe life happened and I didn't think of it. Is there such a thing as renegotiating for you to give me a second look of my application?
Well, sometimes if you're bold enough to go on LinkedIn and email someone directly and say, you know what, I'd like to resubmit my resume because I feel like I left a few things out that I should have. And sometimes when you have a really cool recruiter like me, I'll accept it and take a moment to take a look at it. But you really, in all honesty, I would say that you really just have to be very particular the first time you go because we're moving fast. And so sometimes we don't have time, to look at relook at your resume because you didn't do that. So I would just tell people be very particular, read the requirements. And if it says preferred and you don't have what they're asking for, it said preferred. So you can still apply for the position. So I think I read somewhere where it said it was a statistic about men that apply for jobs they don't even qualified for versus women won't even apply even if they have some experience. They're like, oh no, I don't have the experience. Where men will just apply regardless. So I tell women, get in there, put your neck in there and just see what happens. Don't be afraid.
Got it. Okay, that's a great question. And I do have a follow-up here from Jessica I'm going to read. So in that respect, so let's go back a few years back to COVID. A lot of members had that gap or were laid off. Even in current times, how do you explain COVID gaps or just gaps in general? Like say you took also a gap to take care of a loved one. How do you
Yeah.
explain gaps in a resume, or would you use the cover letter for that, or how do you explain it to you?
I mean, you could do both. I'm not. I love when people tell me all, are very transparent, but in your resume, if you were at home taking care of a parent, you can say that you were a caretaker, a home giver, um, uh, family caretaker, however you want to word it, and put out the dates, the years. But if you were also developing yourself while you were doing that, taking some classes online, if you were volunteering during that time, that's also an area where you can put that. So it shows that you actually were doing something.
Okay, that's good
Yeah.
to know. That's fantastic to know. I do have one other question as we are moving here forward to. I just double checking to ensure that we have all the questions from this side of my screen
Hmm.
covered. Um, but in the nonprofit, so somebody who is experienced and in in changing, let's say that we're changing pivot careers, we've been in the corporate side like yourself, and then now you want to do mission driven. What are some of, maybe let's list five top key skills or core competencies that we should highlight in our resume that would really call your attention, perhaps, that are must be in it.
I think owning the ability to move like water and take on projects, the ability to lead. This is where nonprofits really need a lot of help because they do more with less. So, at 211, I know for a fact, they need someone to come in, and when they're hiring you, they're expecting you to take it and run. And so being able to translate that in some of your job descriptions, your experience for the roles that you've had, talk about that. Talk about how you took on a project and how you, masterfully executed it, and how did you go about doing that? You don't want, and I'm sure people have heard, you don't want bullet lists of, just a regurgitated action list of items. No, we want to know how much money you saved, how many people you helped, what projects you implemented, how you streamlined, tasks, saving the company money, and also your people part. How many people did you manage? Um, who did you work with? Did you work with C level executives? Or were you out in the street talking to homeless people, recruiting? It has to be very detailed and call out those things that nonprofits are looking for. And I think that's one of the things that I was able to convey was, I'm able to, create a strategy for recruiting. They never had that before. They didn't know what was happening out with other, even though they're their own nonprofit organization, they don't know what's happening in certain communities, especially diverse communities, because they only have so many people who can outreach. So having someone like me who knows a lot of the veteran community, has been very impactful in different areas of San Diego. It was nice for them to have that access now.
Awesome. Thank you, Angelica. And those of you who are joining us just towards the end, we're almost done with our discussion. We're talking to Angelica Ponce, who is a veteran spouse, Army, go Army. Ooh, ooh. She's also an executive recruiter, talent magnet. She's been in recruiting for a very long time in the corporate side,
Mhm.
but now she also works and drives mission driven recruiting for 211 San Diego. So if you have any questions, please connect with her. I shared her LinkedIn in the comments. So follow her and stay connected. And anytime, of course, utilize our networks because that's what this is for. We are the rest of the month. We'll be discussing with various nonprofit leaders about best practices, what seems to work based on their experience, so that you, our Blue Star Careers members, and all of our members can perhaps identify a little bit better approach to land that nonprofit career. So if you have any questions, continue to post them. We'll highlight them to you, for you or throughout the rest of the before we end. If not, we'll come back and answer your questions. Now, Angelica, right as we before we wrap up, I did wanted to ask you a quick question. Let me just ensure. In the in today's competitive market, I know the average applications I think runs anything from like 500 to 1,000 or so, opportunities per one job. So it's very competitive, even within the nonprofit. I think we're seeing that. Um, how can you perhaps, or what are additional available resources would you share are available for a very congested sort of a market like this that we can do to to just navigate the process?
Honestly, I would highly recommend Some of those who are in the local community, finding organizations that host events in network. Because, for example, there's an organization, they're in San Diego, it's called Latina Geeks. And while I'm not exactly a techie, I do use a lot of technology to do my job. I use different systems to make my life easier. But because I follow so many different organizations on LinkedIn, and I try to have a pulse, I go to their events because I see who sponsors them. So who sponsors them are is very important because I know if they sponsor them, they're probably gonna have a few people at that event, like Intuit, Microsoft, Ford, um, UCSD. So they send out their teams to support these organizations that they're sponsoring. If you look at any organization that puts on an event, a networking event, whether it's SHRM, San Diego HR Forum, anything like that, or Black Tech Inc., you'll see the sponsor list, and usually those people will send out those organizations will send out their people, and that's when you, hey, my name is Angelica, and I am looking for this position. I saw that you had a position posted. What's it like working there? And become friends with them so that that's how you build your network. So you're not just someone pinging them on LinkedIn or emailing them multiple times and you're not hearing from them. But if you take some time to pay the $5 or $30 to get to a networking event, and rub elbows, and especially even the VEC puts on huge veteran employment committee in San Diego. They put on huge job fairs, and the same thing. There's a lot of people who are willing to help each other, especially in the veteran community, but you got to get out. You have to reach out and you have to do the work, to make those connections. So I think that's probably my biggest gift that I have for myself is that I've paid a lot of time and energy in building my network.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Get out there. Put your shoes on and get out there and just handshake or get to know the actual individual before. Sometimes, yeah, you're right. Sometimes on LinkedIn, I know sometimes I'm guilty as charged. I get a lot of messages and I cannot get to them, and it
Hmm.
takes me a week or 2 weeks sometimes
Yeah.
to get back to them. And I don't mean to ghost them. I just simply don't have the bandwidth at the moment to do that. But that's a great tip. Just pick up your nice shoes, get dressed up, and go out and join some of these specific events that are local to your area, because that's where you will probably connect with the right professional who will share some insights. They might not be the right hiring manager at the final, but at least you'll get to know what that organization or that particular group may be
Hmm.
looking for, or what is it like to work there. Sometimes you
Yeah.
guys just gotta know. Yeah. So thank you for that. Now, I do want to ask you another question, Angelica, before we go, just to ensure our members. I know that you are busy recruiting out and about all the time. So, what are you currently working on? How can we help your mission at 211 San Diego and your mission as a recruiter to identify great talent?
I think right now I am my initiative for this year is working closely with the local colleges, um, because of the fact that there's a lot of transitioning military, who are going to the colleges and getting skilled up. I'm reaching to, even right now we're in talks with Point Loma Nazarene, looking at having partnerships for internships even. So my big push is for the colleges. I've worked with a lot of the nonprofits, but now I'm looking at working closer with the colleges and creating an avenue, because a lot of, say example, a lot of veterans are going in and getting their degrees and maybe they want to do an MSW. Well, what a better way but to transition from the MSW program into 211, working with the community. So those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at doing. And I'm happy to partner with anybody who might be on here that happens to hear about it. So any of the local colleges in San Diego, and I'm already working with many of them, but not all of them. So that's the initiatives I have right now that I'm focused on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And what would you like our members to remember about you and your mission? You know, how can we sort of continue to follow up and support in general in the personal level?
Uh, I think most importantly is advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for the income that you're looking for. Don't be afraid to shine on LinkedIn. You know, just advocate for yourself. I see so many beautiful resumes coming in from military spouses and veterans. And sometimes I think they're afraid to highlight some of the accolades. Um, and it just it pains me when I see, they're not highlighting some of the things, and I find out later in in the interview a little bit more about the person, which is great. But not every recruiter is like me, so I would just say don't be afraid to shine. Don't be afraid to show your experience. Be careful on the length of your resume, and then also utilize LinkedIn as much as you can. It's a free site, so unless you pay for it, which I pay for mine, but um, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation, and help anybody in need, or just some advice also.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Angelica. You're a wealth of knowledge. And we look forward, I'm going to put you on the spot here, to staying in touch with you and using you and your network to perhaps to channel referrals and circulate great, amazing talent and resumes, as long as, of course, they're qualified and we have done our on our end as applicants to qualified. I think that's how we can brainstorm better and reach more support. Let me take a few moments right now before we end to highlight a couple of our viewers or members who are supporting this webinar. Thank you, Johnny, Melanie, Jennifer, EL. Thank you so much, Jonathan, Jim, Livia. Thank you so much, Darcia. Please connect with us. Let us know how we can support you. Junior, John, and Jennifer, thank you so much for supporting on LinkedIn. And then we have, of course, our team on Facebook. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Deborah. And I'm not going to highlight every single one of them, but I will say thank you, Angel, also as well, and our Spouse First community members who are watching out there as well. And unfortunately, I can't see the comments yet on this side. But everyone, continue to post your questions. This whole month is going to be about nonprofit work. But as Angelica mentioned, you got to reach out and ask us. Let us know. Be patient, of course. Sometimes there's only two of us. There's only one of us.
Yeah.
But we'll try to do our best to get you connected in a timely fashion. And yes, Jennifer, thank you so much. Spouses also get 1 year free LinkedIn. If you'd like to know how to get that, please, we'll share the link as well. You can get a whole year of free LinkedIn. And you can expand and explore a lot of those opportunities. But in my modest, humble, sometimes frugal opinion, you don't need to be a LinkedIn premium to get out there and just showcase your talent. You
Yeah.
can just start posting, start creating your own career journey, your trajectory, highlighting the great successes that you've done. If nonprofit is your mission, then start creating mission driven stories and become a really great storyteller of your own success. Any last thoughts for you, Miss Angelica? I thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time.
I actually have a position open right now. It
Oh,
is a
awesome.
grants and contracts position that we have. It has one direct report that would be the payroll accountant reporting into this position. And we're looking for someone who has experience with NetSuite, working with Paylocity, someone who's worked in the nonprofit world, has contacts, and is able to work with other nonprofits. So if you are interested, or if you know anybody, feel free to go to my page and share my post, or just reach out to me directly.
Absolutely. And I shared in the comments the link to 211 San Diego. And then if you head to their page and you scroll down to where it says careers, you will see the post there. But when in doubt, just simply follow Angelica in on LinkedIn and connect with her. And then not only this job, of course, this one right now is hot and ready for to welcome someone. But I know that you quite often welcome more talent. And as we approach PCS season, some of those folks that might be moving into the area, any last minute recommendations, best practices for people that are moving into the area, Angelica?
Yes, I would suggest that they look up the VEC. It's the Veteran Employment Committee. They're on LinkedIn. Charlene Adelino, she is the director, or she's the chair of that nonprofit. So she's hosting a few job fairs that are coming up. And then if you are someone that works with an organization that would want to participate, She hosts a monthly meeting that's in person, and that's another great place to network. Just by volunteering your time. If you're not working and you need somewhere to volunteer, that would be a great place to go. And so definitely look at my page and follow organizations that I'm posting or collaborating with.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. I know we're a little bit over extra time from your busy schedule. We want you to ensure that you go out and send referrals and hire individuals. Thank you so much for participating, for sharing your expertise. We look forward to collaborating with you the rest of the year and, of course, staying connected. So thank you, Angelica.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.